Imagine for a moment a manga so dramatic and yet so wholesome at the same time that the story needs 10 chapters in order to do a prologue, and in that prologue it goes from mid to wholesome to abject suffering just in the first chapter. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. And for once, this is not a review. This time I want to talk about my impressions about Oshi, not the anime, mind you, the manga. To start, let's get things clear. What is Oshi? Oshi is a manga series written by Akasaka Aka and illustrated by Yokoyari Mengo that started serialization in 2020. Akasaka Aka is, for those who don't remember mangaka's names, the author of Kaguya-sama Loves War, which ended serialization in last year, 2022. Now, why am I doing a video like this rather than talking about any other manga out there? First, it's because it's a really dramatic and nuanced story, I think, that invites discussion for the questions presented. And the second, and the one that pushed me to read the manga, Oshi is the second anime in a span of 2 years to achieve the feat of debunking Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood from the top of my anime list. And what was the last one before it? Kaguya-sama Loves War 3rd season, also known as Kaguya-sama Ultra Romantic. And as already stated, both series are from the same author. And when I saw that Oshi debunked Fullmetal Alchemist with just one episode, I was like, holy shit, the madman did it. This new series must be nuts. Who would be able to break the status quo 2 years in a row after God knows how long? And that's when I went into head first with absolute no idea what was on the other side. To be clear, for the sake of this video, I will not be talking about the anime, just the manga. I chose not to watch the anime given that the manga is way ahead in the plot and because I would not survive the emotional roller coaster a second time. That being said, I will talk about things that will happen later in the story, but not in a detailed way to avoid spoilers for those who will stick with the anime. To begin, let me explain what the title means. Oshi, I don't know if there is an exact word in English for it, but it would translate to the person or someone you idolize as a celebrity or personality. For example, I could say Pekora is my Oshi because I like the content she creates in a way. You could say it translates to idol. No, this preposition represents the ownership, similar to the S with an apostrophe in English. And then ko. This is the word for child or children in this case. So the title translates basically to my idol's children. And that's what the story is about overall. Now let me talk about the beginning. At the beginning, my man, what the fuck? I mean, I was completely blind. I went in completely blind. The only thing I knew about the manga at this point was the image that was published in the Kaguya-sama manga. And that was it. But eventually it got to me. The story is actually about the eyes and the power they have. For the sake of explanation, let's call it Sharingan, because it's funny. These eyes, or rather, these stars, and hear me out now, this may be a speculation of my part, but I have a fairly okay guess as to what they represent. Lies. This is something mentioned by I in passing, but I came to realize this after someone outside of the family. And this appears in the anime, most likely. I don't actually know, because as of the time of writing, the 6th episode just aired, and for the most of it, I just get to know what's going on through memes and ship arguments. Activates Sharingan when imitating I. And the manga expands on the theory as the single stars of Aqua and Ruby are implied, and the eyes even change color to symbolize intent, let's say. there are a few memorable moments that I want to comment on for this section. Following the theme of criticizing the Japanese entertainment industry, there's this one arc which starts with the adaptation of a manga into a play that Aqua gets to act in. Not on his own accord, but at this point of the story, his journey is still at the beginning. He finds out at some point that one of the actors that will be going to co-star the play may have a lead on his objective, and so the story goes on from there. And while the main plot's a battle of ideals on acting and ends with one of the cases that reinforces my theory about the power of the eyes, the one part of it that I want to highlight is when there's a conflict between the playwright and the author of the manga the play is about, because the author thinks, for brevity, that the adaptation strays too far from the source material. For the second time in the story, I wonder if Akasaka-sensei is letting something out through this. And the conflict escalates to the point of nearly throwing the playwright out of production, but through a whole side arc of convincing the original author that the guy making the adaptation is not a complete incompetent stud, the cast, mainly Aqua and Kana, influenced the author in a way to give the playwright a second chance. And then the manga drops this gem, which hits too close to home to me. I was on vacation when I was reading it, and audibly groaned when I saw this with how much it reminded me of my job. Now, coming back to the actual story impressions, this arc goes on to be a good medium of developing many facets of the supporting cast, as well as ending with a victory to the only correct side of the ship's war, as per se. However, the real payoff is at chapter 68, when we find out something important, and simple to say, I non-ironically thought this story had hard crashed face first into the pavement. And frankly, I think my reaction was warranted given what happens in the chapter. I started to question whether Akasaka-sensei had given up on the series to focus on his newest project, and the story would become a standard school rom-com from that point on. Given the length of the prologue alone, this was not so far-fetched in my opinion. Not to mention that this feeling followed for the next 9 chapters or so, because the next arc is basically focused on a song that I hope will be the opening for the second season, for the debut of Ruby's idol group. At this point in the story, I was thinking, how would you salvage this? There's no way this story can continue like this. And then chapter 79 happened. And for this part, I gotta take a little detour to alienate part of people watching it. Basically, in chapter 79, Akasaka took a page from 80s American animation and put the Dungeon Master from the D&D animation into the story, with no rhyme or reason. This figure appears out of nowhere, unannounced, and its sheer presence at that point single-handedly pulled the plot from the ground and gave the manga some gas to continue going. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I don't quite like the figure of the Dungeon Master when talking about the ongoings of the story, because for one, it's a character who is not directly connected to any of the cast. He's no one when we look at the whole of the plot, just an agent of change with no ties to anything. In layman's terms, it's someone who comes out of nowhere, says something, and this single interaction with a stranger changes the whole plot for no apparent reason. As a plot device, I feel like this is heavy-handed way to railroad the story back on track, even if used sparingly, and most likely will be filed under oddities that are not being explained because it's magic, much like the half of Isekai experience we got at the beginning of the manga. And the story continues from there. The major arc is still in development, so I can't really say much. So let's go to the next theme of the video. So I had this whole tirade planned to discuss the fact that I was hoping that when they eventually introduced Akane in the second season, they would cushion the blow of a second love interest a bit, since from experience, love interests introduced in the later seasons are generally disliked by the viewers. Take for example Nisekoi. But as things would have it, they fast forwarded the story in the anime more than I initially predicted, and I had to throw some hours of work away. Oh well. At the very least, I can see that the audience response to her is positive, and for the most part, it's pretty great, since I'm also a fierce member of Team Akane, and she overall has more impact in the main plot of the series. Outside of that tangent, let me get to the bulk of this section, Aqua's relationships across the series. To talk about romance in Oshinoko, we have to set some metrics of where romance falls into the mix. And for that, we need to define what love is. Much like in Minamoto-kun's no Monogatari, link to my review in the description. Let's analyze Ai first. For starters, the first instance of love that's presented and the one that sparks the whole plot is the love of Goro or Aqua towards Ai as his Oshi. In the first instance, it begins and ends there. Ai is an Oshi for Goro, and that's it. In a second instance, after being reincarnated, the relationship between Aqua and Ai changes to be a maternal one. We only get to see snippets of their life together, but the truth is, as his mother, she interacted much more with him than when he was Goro. Next, Miyako. Let it be known that I'm only mentioning her to address the Aqua x Miyako memes. Miyako volunteers to raise Aqua and Ruby, and in many ways becomes the, let's say, grandmother raising the pair. It's notable that she chooses to keep her distance from the private choices of both of the kids as a way to let they do their own thing philosophy, but also to allow Akasaka Sensei to throw some jokes in expense of the protagonists. Either way, a maternal love, different from a mother, but still maternal. And at this point, we get to the shipping level, where here we are going to actually touch romance. First, Kana. Kana has a chronic case of being a tsundere, way too stubborn for her own good. Not only that, but the fact that Aqua is, for the most part, apathetic towards her moves gives me the impression that if they end up together, it will either be forced by a subject outside of the plot, or will be cheese to appease the majority of the audience that chose to support the ship. If I'm being honest, as the story goes for her, I would hope that she chooses to be single at the end, because she's at this point and she has not yet even decided if she likes Aqua or not. And while for some time Aqua supports her and whatever, some stuff happens that twists this relationship a lot. My point is, as a ship for Aqua, I think Kana is a bad choice because I don't vibe with the character, but also because her character arc deviates from Aqua in a way that I can't see them being together. I say this even though the amount of flags raised since the beginning of the story indicates that she will be the chosen. However, if there's one thing that Gotobu no Hanayomi has taught me, is that no matter how many flags are raised or how rabid the fandom is, the author has the last say on it. And now I gotta talk about the best ship in the series, Akane. Akane's introduction to the plot is outright hardcore, being the tragic example of one of the ugly facets of social interactions nowadays. I initially didn't give her much credit, and I was genuinely surprised when I saw that she stuck around and ended up not being a side character, but someone that actually is one of the mains. At that point in the story, I really thought that the whole plot was going to run with a single love interest in Kana, and frankly, thank God that Akane stuck around, because the more time passed and she contributed to the story as a support for Aqua, as a foil to Kana and as a character to settle a major plot point later on. I could stay here and talk about how much Akane is better than Kana, but we would be here all day. And with that, I've talked about all the ships in the series. But wait, you may be wondering, hold on, you didn't talk about all of them. There's still one left. And yes, there is one more love case, but it's not a ship. It goes on its own category because it's such a big plot point that the manga has not dared mention it while the major point's in motion. Let's rewind a bit. Aqua was at first Goro, and Ruby was Serena. Now, if we cast back to the beginning of the story, and I don't know how much the anime actually shows about it, Serena multiple times mentions that she likes Goro. So much so that it becomes one of the factors that help the Dungeon Master, as it were, to turn the story around and breathe new life into it. And mind you, at the point where this happens, it becomes ambiguous whether the Aqua X Ruby will be developed as a plot point or has been shelved. So for the time being, I can only say that it will be interesting to see when they reveal their old names to each other. I really have no expectations for this one. Now I have commented on all the plausible ships. Let's go to the next topic. Aqua X Mencho is not a real ship, don't at me. If it isn't clear yet, I'm choosing to stay clear from the anime for the most part. Outside of memes and random screen caps, I have not watched it, so I won't be commenting on animation or voice casting. This whole section is just to say that I think Aidaru does not fit as an opening, in my opinion. I'm not saying this song's bad, far from it. It's pretty nice, but the thing is too happy for the themes of the anime. What I mean is, I would skip if the last episode was too much of a cliffhanger. I got a remix from DJ Joe that I really like in the description. That being said, Mephisto is pretty spot on as an ending. As the last act of this scuffed video, I just want to talk a bit about the series in general and what I think will happen. First off, as I already said, I went into this manga with no expectations, and this probably contributed to how strongly I reacted to it. The story is pretty well developed, and while sometimes it may go on a roundabout ways to get to the point across, I feel like it's really well balanced in all fronts. Be it the everlasting impact of Ai in every one of the cast, the comedy that showed traces of Kaguya-sama, and the clever writing that doesn't let you forget that this is a story about vengeance first and anything else later. What will probably happen next in the story? I can only guess, and here's the thing. At the very start of the story, the manga shows this from a moveset interview with everyone in the cast, presumably in a somewhat near future where they talk about Ai. But in many ways, it leaves hints to things to happen. I can only hope the hints are not flags, otherwise all the ships are dead. For real now. 1. I would guess the manga will go until the end of 2023 or the first half of 2024, given that Akasaka Sensei has already a new manga in the works. 2. At this point, a new season of the anime is more than certain, though a third season is uncertain at best. The opening for said season will be an idol group song. For being honest, I realistically think that Aqua will end up with Kana, but the chooses to be single route wouldn't be bad. 5. Akane is a best girl, no discussions. And those are my impressions for Oshinoko. So thank you for watching this scuffed video. Thank you for listening to me ramble for I don't know how many minutes about this manga that's still coming out, and yet it's so consuming. Every one of the chapters that come out just give me anxiety because I want to see what happens next. And oh my god, it's so nice. The aesthetic of the manga is so nice. The aesthetic of the anime, I think, surpasses in many ways what I would expect of an adaptation. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I was so shocked at the beginning. I went into this without even knowing the theme, and it just broke me. True and true. When chapter 10 happens, and I don't know where this translates in the anime, but when the big thing happens, I just didn't know what to do, man. I was shocked. I was really shocked. Really just, oh my god, what just happened? Like, I couldn't really, and I can't really say what that emotion was, but oh my god. And to be fair, we review things based in comparisons, just to give you some insight in the way I think. Every time there is one of these kind of happenings in a story, I always compare it to Gurren Lagann, because Gurren Lagann has this same example in Kamina. And while I think Kamina died too early in a way that doesn't actually reach the audience, I think I did it somehow. I don't know how really, but somehow what happens to her really reaches the audience, really reaches the readers in a way that I think Kamina didn't. But I mean, it's just comparisons for roots and whatever. That being said, I hope the ending is good. I haven't actually finished Kaguya-sama, so I don't have a track record of if Akasaka Sensei actually can stick the landing or not. I mean, each story is their own, so maybe if he didn't in Kaguya-sama, maybe he can do it here. Maybe he can do it both times. Maybe he can fail both times. The thing is, I really hope that the ending makes sense. That's the only thing I hope every time I read manga or watch an anime. I really like the series. I really wanted the opening to be an idol group song. Bring back the idol group songs for anime, please. Oh my god. I mean, I really like Idolmaster. I really like Love Live. And this is about idols, and I really thought this was going to be a more idol group kind of deal, but it turns out it wasn't. And really, I don't know. At this point, I'm just rambling to the microphone. It is out of script. If it didn't become clear, I'm reading off a script, and this part is really out there. I'm just rambling at this point. But the manga is pretty nice. The anime may also be awesome. I don't actually know. I didn't watch it really, and I will stay clear from it. I don't actually want to relieve the shock of the first part. I don't want to relieve any of the shocks for that matter, because they are really strong. But I hope the anime does well. I hope there's a second season. I hope there's a third season. I hope that the whole manga can be translated into an anime. I hope that it all gets adapted into an anime. I hope other work, the next work from Akasaka Sensei, gets to be successful. I really like his style. At this point, I just read Kaguya-sama and Oshinoko, but at this point, he just has like 3 publications, and one of them I am still to read. And but just to end this all, thank you for watching this scuffed rant of a video. Thank you for listening to my stuff. If you can, please share, please like, please subscribe. Please join the Discord. If you can also listen to the podcast. I do it every 2 weeks. I really want this thing to take off. So if you can, please stick around, I guess. And I will see you guys in the next one. I don't know if a video or a podcast, probably a podcast, but anyways, I see you guys in the next one. I hope stick around. Bye.